I am Joseph Parker, 73 years old. Last Saturday, my son Adam threw a party at his $4 million mansion. He was celebrating his promotion to senior vice president, a promotion I secretly gave him. He didn't know that. He just knew I was the embarrassing old man in the corner, the one in the 20-year-old suit. When his wife Sarah and my own daughter Emily started mocking my simple life in front of his CEO, Adam didn't defend me. He laughed. He laughed at the man who owned the very company they all worked for. That laugh was the most expensive mistake of his life. Before I continue this story, please let me know in the comments where you are listening from. And press like and subscribe if you believe that loyalty to family should always come before social status. The party was suffocating. I felt completely out of place. I stood in the grand marble foyer of the Greenwich, Connecticut mansion surrounded by the noise of strangers. Champagne flutes clicked, empty laughter echoed off the 20-foot ceilings, and a jazz quartet played softly in the corner. This was Adam's world now and his wife Sarah's. It was not mine. I instinctively pulled at the lapel of my old wool suit. It was the only one I owned. Matilda, my late wife, had bought it for me over 2 decades ago for our daughter Emily's wedding. It was the suit I wore to Matilda's funeral. Tonight, under the glare of a $50,000 crystal chandelier, it felt like a heavy, outdated uniform. Father Joseph. Sarah glided toward me. She wasn't walking. She was gliding. Her emerald green silk dress clung to her like a second skin. She was holding her champagne flute like a scepter. "Are you enjoying the party?" she asked, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "It's quite a gathering, Sarah. Adam must be very pleased." "He is," she said, her eyes scanning the room over my shoulder, already looking for someone more important to talk to. "Oh, can I get you some water? I know you don't partake." She smiled sweetly at a woman standing nearby, sharing a private joke. "We have to be careful. Alcohol isn't good for the elderly." The other woman giggled, a polite tinkling sound. I just nodded. "Water would be fine. Thank you, Sarah." As she signaled a waiter, my mind drifted to the down payment for this very house. $4,250,000. The down payment was $800,000. I remembered signing the check from my trust, the one Adam had presented to me as a business loan. He had graphs. He had projections. He called it leveraging family assets. I called it what it was. A gift. A handout. One I knew I would never see again. Just like the $200,000 for Emily's wedding at Lake Como, or the $100,000 for my son-in-law Mark's failed pet food delivery app. I was their private bank, a silent, shameful bank they preferred to keep hidden. I saw Emily across the room, my daughter. She and Mark were laughing with a group of younger colleagues from Apex Solutions. She saw me looking. Her smile faltered for just a second. She gave me a quick, tight little wave, the kind you give someone you barely know, before turning her back to me. Her cheeks flushed. Embarrassed. They were always embarrassed by me. Embarrassed by my 2005 Toyota Camry, the one I still changed the oil on myself. Embarrassed by my modest New Haven apartment, the one Matilda and I raised them in, the one where their mother died. Embarrassed by my old suit and my refusal to buy things I don't need. Adam was standing near the massive fireplace talking to a tall, silver-haired man. The man wore a Tom Ford suit that I knew from a glance cost more than my Toyota. Adam spotted me. His face tensed. "Dad," he called out, his voice tight. "Come over here." I walked over. The contrast was almost comical. My worn wool versus their immaculate tailoring. "This is a big night for you, son. Congratulations again on the promotion." Adam gave a short, forced laugh. That was the laugh I always got when he had to introduce me to his important friends. "Thanks, Dad. Dad, this is Mr. Peterson, my CEO. Sir, this is my father, Joseph Parker." Peterson shook my hand. His grip was firm. He wore a Patek Philippe watch. His eyes did a quick professional scan, face, suit, shoes. 1 second. That's all it took for him to assess and dismiss me. Adam jumped in as if apologizing for my very existence. "My dad, he's retired. He enjoys a very simple life." Simple, I thought. That was the word they used. Not frugal, not humble. Simple. The word you use for someone who isn't smart enough to achieve more. The word you use for the man whose simple investments funded the very education, the very house, the very life they were now ashamed of. "A fine quality," Peterson said politely before turning his full attention back to Adam. We're all expecting big things from your division next quarter, Adam. The board is very impressed. Thank you, sir. I won't let you down. The board. I had to stop myself from smiling. The board of Apex Solutions, a subsidiary of JP Holdings, consisted of 2 voting members. Me, Joseph Parker, owner of 51% of the stock, and my lawyer of 50 years, Benjamin Stone. Peterson. This powerful CEO was my employee. Adam, my arrogant, embarrassed son, was his employee. They had no idea. They thought I was just a retired landlord from New Haven living off a pension and a few rental properties. They didn't know those rental properties were 3 commercial buildings downtown. They didn't know my pension came from the sale of Innovatech, a software company I built in my garage in the 90s and sold for a fortune. Apex was just one of 12 companies in my portfolio. A small one, a sentimental one. I bought it because Adam worked there, thinking it would be something to leave him. I kept it a secret because of Matilda. She always wanted the kids to stand on their own. She worried they were becoming entitled. After she died, I honored her wish. I cut them off from direct cash handouts, switching to the business loans they pitched me. I wanted to see if they could fly on their own. I was wrong. They didn't fly. They just got better at finding new ways to suck the marrow from my bones, all while looking down on me for being the simple man who provided it. Later, the sound of a spoon tapping on glass quieted the room. Adam stood on the low step leading to the dining room, Sarah plastered to his side, beaming like a queen. Thank you everyone for coming, Adam began, his voice confident, the voice of a senior vice president. This is a milestone. Being promoted to SVP of engineering at Apex is a true honor, he went on. He thanked Sarah, his rock. He thanked Mr. Peterson, his mentor. He thanked his incredible team, gesturing to Emily and Mark. I stood in the corner by the oversized ficus tree holding my glass of water. I waited. I always wait. Just a nod. A brief mention. And thanks to my father for being here. Nothing. I was invisible. After the applause died down, the party resumed. And then it happened. A young executive, Kevin, clearly trying to impress his new SVP, raised his glass. Adam, this is all so incredible. I've got to ask, what did your father do before he retired? He must be incredibly proud. An innocent question. The room went still. The jazz quartet seemed to fade. Every eye turned to Adam, then to me. I was the spectacle, the old man in the corner. Adam froze. His smile locked in place. He was searching for an answer that wouldn't embarrass him in his world. And then Sarah, my daughter-in-law, stepped in. She always steps in. She laughed that high, sharp, tinkling laugh. "Oh, Kevin, that's so sweet," she exclaimed loud enough for everyone to hear. "Father Joseph here is, well, he's just very simple." She emphasized the word, looking right at me, then back at the group as if sharing a delightful secret. A few of Adam's colleagues chuckled, testing the waters. Emily, my daughter, my own blood, a child. I once read stories to every night, saw the opening, and jumped in, desperate to show she was part of the in crowd. "He's a small-time investor, right, Dad?" Her voice was high, patronizing, the tone you use for a child. "He has a few rental properties downtown. You know, just something to keep him busy in his old age." Now the laughter was easier. The executives understood. The old man was harmless, a quaint working-class relic. Mark, my son-in-law, always the opportunist, piled on. "That's right," he boomed. "I saw him last week driving that 2005 Toyota Camry. The paint's peeling. I told him, 'Father Joseph, for God's sake, let us buy you a new car.' But he said," Mark paused for comedic effect, "he said he'd rather change his own oil." The room erupted. Real laughter this time. Loud, mocking laughter. They were laughing at my car, at my thrift, at me. I looked at Adam. I waited. This was his moment. The moment to be a son. To say, "That's enough." To defend the man who raised him. He didn't. He just smiled, that tight, embarrassed smile, and shrugged as if to say, "What can you do? He's family." Sarah, glowing from her social victory, delivered the final, fatal blow. "We try. We really do," she said, sighing dramatically to the group. "We invited him on our family trip to Europe last spring. He said he'd rather stay home and fix a leaky pipe." She shook her head, her face a mask of false sympathy. "It's just, he doesn't really understand our world." Our world, the world I paid for. And then Adam, my son, laughed. It wasn't a nervous chuckle. It was a full, genuine laugh. A laugh of relief. A laugh that said, "Thank you for finding a way to make my embarrassing father entertaining." He laughed. My daughter laughed. My son-in-law laughed. My CEO, Mr. Peterson, smiled politely. And every employee of the company I owned was laughing at me. The anger never came. The sadness was brief. What replaced it was a profound cold clarity. It was as if a fog I had been living in for decades suddenly vanished. I saw them. I saw them all for exactly what they were. Matilda's voice whispered in my ear. "Enough, Joseph. Enough." I didn't say a word. I didn't cause a scene. I calmly placed my glass of water on a passing waiter's tray. I turned. I started walking. I walked past the laughing faces. I walked through the marble foyer. I walked to the massive carved oak front door. The laughter died as they realized I was leaving. The sudden silence was louder than the noise had been. "Dad," Adam's voice. Panicked, confused. The sound of a host whose party just went wrong. "Dad, where are you going? The party's not over." I stopped at the doorway. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. If I turned around, he would see my eyes. And I wasn't ready for him to see my eyes. I just tilted my head, letting my voice carry back into the silent, expensive room. "I'm not feeling well," I said. My voice was calm, steady. "You all enjoy your world." I stepped out into the cold October night, pulling the heavy door shut behind me. The solid, definitive thud of the latch clicking into place sounded like a gavel. The trial was over. Judgment had been passed. The hour-long drive back to New Haven was quiet. The Merritt Parkway was dark, the trees lining the road like skeletons in the late October night. I didn't turn on the radio. I just listened to the familiar, steady hum of my 2005 Toyota Camry. My son-in-law Mark was right. The clear coat is peeling above the rear bumper. I already have the touch-up paint and sandpaper set aside to fix it myself next weekend. I don't mind the work. This car has 240,000 miles on it, and the engine has never once failed me. It's paid for, unlike the $100,000 German spaceship my son leases, a rolling monument to debt designed to impress people he doesn't even like. I didn't feel anger on that drive. The hot sting of humiliation at the party had cooled and hardened into something else. Something cold, heavy, and clear. It was focus. It was the same icy calm I used to get right before closing a difficult acquisition, that precise moment you realize the other side has just fatally overplayed their hand. They thought I was a simple old man, a relic. They had no idea I owned the entire casino. I pulled into my assigned parking spot behind my building. It's not much to look at from the outside. Just old, solid New Haven brick and black fire escapes. It's the kind of building Adam and Sarah would be horrified to tell their Greenwich friends they were visiting. I took the old rattling elevator up to the 4th floor. The hallway smelled faintly of wax polish and someone down the hall cooking garlic. I put my key in the lock. The door opened with a familiar welcome creak, and I was home. The air was instantly different. It was warm. It smelled of old books, the worn leather of my favorite armchair, and, if I closed my eyes and breathed deep, the faint, lingering scent of Matilda's rosewater perfume. I hung my keys on the simple brass hook by the door. Her favorite red scarf was still hanging on the coat rack next to it. 10 years. 10 years since she'd been gone, and I still couldn't bring myself to move that scarf. I walked into the small living room. The hardwood floors creaked under my feet. The furniture was old, comfortable, worn in all the right places from a lifetime of use. The yellow afghan she knitted during her last winter was still draped over the back of the sofa. Adam's house, that $4 million ice palace. That wasn't a home. It was a stage, a showroom. It was cold marble, sharp steel edges and vast empty spaces of white and gray. It smelled like industrial cleaning chemicals and expensive sterile air. It was a place designed to impress. My apartment, this was a place designed to live. This was the apartment I brought Matilda home to as a bride 50 years ago. This is where we raised Adam and Emily. This is where I held Matilda's hand as she took her last breath right in the bedroom down the hall. My children saw this place as a symbol of my failure, my inability to keep up. They didn't understand. They couldn't. They didn't know that after Matilda died, money stopped being about comfort and started being about security. It became a game I played in silence, a game I had won over and over again. I walked to my study. It's not a study, really. It's a small spare room cramped with old filing cabinets and an oak desk. But this is where JP Holdings lives. This is where the man they laughed at tonight kept the records of the 12 companies he owned. My children, they have no idea. They think my world is this apartment. They think my wealth is a monthly pension check and the rent from a few tenants in a drafty old building downtown. They see failure. They see a simple, sad old man who peaked 30 years ago and has been quietly fading ever since. They are spectacularly, painfully wrong. When Matilda died, it felt like the world had stopped. The color drained from everything. For a year, I just existed. I sat in this very apartment, in this very chair, and waited for the days to pass. But one night I realized I couldn't honor her memory by simply fading away. She was a fighter. She fought for our family. She fought cancer for 3 long years and never once complained. So I decided to fight, not for more but for security. To build something so solid that my children and their children would never have to know the kind of fear Matilda and I knew when we were young. I started small. I sold a parcel of commercial land I'd bought in the 80s, a piece of scrubland everyone thought was worthless. The city decided to build a new highway exit right next to it. That scrubland sold for $3 million. Adam and Emily knew about that. They saw the new car I bought. Well, it was a 5-year-old Lexus, but it was new to me. They thought I'd put the rest in a safe, boring retirement fund. But I didn't. I'd been watching a small software company in California, just a handful of kids in a garage with a crazy idea about data compression. They were called Innovatech. I took $1 million, money I was fully prepared to lose, and I invested it all. That was 15 years ago. Innovatech didn't just succeed, it exploded. It became the backbone of cloud storage for a dozen other tech giants. When I finally sold my majority stake 5 years after Matilda passed, my personal wealth wasn't just comfortable. It was generational. But I never told them. I remembered Matilda's constant worry. "Don't let the money make them soft, Joseph," she'd say. "I want them to build their own lives. I want them to be proud of what they accomplish, not just what they inherit." So I honored her wish. I kept my life exactly the same. I kept the Camry. I kept this apartment. And I built JP Holdings, Joseph Parker Holdings. I set it up as a blind trust managed by my oldest friend, my lawyer Ben Stone. Today, JP Holdings is a quiet $900 million behemoth. We own 12 companies across North America, software, real estate, logistics, and a mid-level tech consulting firm called Apex Solutions. I bought Apex 4 years ago. It was a sentimental purchase. Adam and Emily both worked there. I thought it would be a nice surprise, something to give them one day, a way to show them what I'd built. But I waited. I watched. And what I saw, it worried me. I saw how they treated their colleagues. I saw the entitlement, the arrogance. And I saw how they treated me. They saw my humility, my desire for them to be independent, and they mistook it for failure. They thought I was the one who hadn't kept up. They thought they were the successful ones, and I was just the simple old man they had to tolerate at holidays. They didn't just misunderstand me. They despised the very foundation I was built on, the foundation that was holding up their entire fragile, over-leveraged world. Sitting here now in my quiet study, the laughter from that party is still ringing in my ears. Sarah's voice, "He doesn't understand our world." She's right, I don't. But she's about to get a very, very harsh lesson in mine. I sat at my old oak desk, the one Matilda always said was too big for the room. The heavy black telephone felt cool in my hand. It was 11:30 at night, but I knew Ben Stone would be awake. In 50 years of friendship, I'd never known him to sleep before 1 in the morning. He was my lawyer, my confidant, and the public-facing president of JP Holdings. He was the only other person on earth who knew the truth. He picked up on the second ring, his voice gravelly as always. "Stone." "Ben, it's me." There was a pause. He knew my voice just as he knew my moods. "Joseph, you're home early. How was the big party? How's the new senior vice president? The party, I said, staring at a small framed photo of Matilda on my desk, was very informative. Ben waited. He knew this tone. This was not a social call. This was JP Holdings calling, not Joseph the friend. I need you to pull the personnel files for Apex Solutions. I said, my voice quiet. Apex at this hour? Ben sounded confused. Is Peterson giving us trouble? I thought his quarterly projections were solid. Not Peterson, I said. I need the contract status for 3 specific employees: Adam Parker, Emily Collins, and Mark Collins. The silence on the other end of the line was absolute. I could hear the faint crackle of the connection. Joseph, Ben's voice was suddenly sharp, laced with confusion. What do you mean, contract status? You know their status. You are the majority owner. You're the one who signed off on Adam's promotion last week. You approved Emily's stock option grant 6 months ago. What is this? I know what I signed, I said. The cold clarity from the party hadn't faded. It was growing stronger. It was making me steady. I'm not asking you to review their status, Ben. I'm instructing you to change it. Change it how? More bonuses, Joseph, you've already given them. No. I cut him off, my voice flat and final. No more bonuses. I want you to prepare the paperwork. Termination. There was a sharp intake of breath. Termination? Joseph, have you lost your mind? You are talking about your children? I am, I said. Fire them. All 3 of them. Fire them. Ben's voice, usually so calm and measured, cracked. Joseph, what in God's name are you talking about? Are you drunk? You don't even drink. I'm sober, Ben, and I've never been clearer in my life. You can't be serious, he stammered. Joseph, as your lawyer, as your counsel for JP Holdings, I must formally advise you that this is an incredibly reckless, extreme, and personal decision. You cannot just fire your family. Adam is a highly competent SVP. His division's performance is up 12% this quarter. Emily is one of the best marketing directors we've ever had at Apex. This is not a sound business decision. This is revenge. I let him finish. I let the silence hang in the air of my study for a long moment. You're right about one thing, Ben, I said finally, my voice dangerously quiet. It is personal. But competence doesn't excuse cruelty, and it certainly doesn't excuse profound public disrespect, not to me, not to the man who signs their paychecks. What did they do, Joseph? What could possibly be this bad? So I told him. I recounted the entire evening. I told him about the looks of pity from strangers. I told him about Adam's embarrassed introductions, and then I told him about the laughter. They stood there, all of them, in front of 50 people in front of their CEO, and they took turns mocking me. Emily, my own daughter, described my life's work as having a few rental properties downtown to keep him busy. I heard Ben swear softly under his breath. Then Mark, her husband, joked about my 2005 Toyota, the one I keep because it was the last car Matilda ever rode in. He joked about me changing my own oil, and they all laughed. They laughed at me, Ben, as if I were a court jester, as if I were a simple old man. I repeated the words Sarah had used, and I could feel the ice in my own voice. And Adam, I said, pausing to keep my voice steady. Adam. He laughed too. He laughed with them. He let his wife call me a man who doesn't understand their world. That ungrateful. Ben began, his lawyerly composure gone replaced by the anger of a friend. Joseph, I'm so sorry. I told you for years you were giving them too much, making them soft. Soft, I said with a bitter laugh. They're not soft, Ben. They're rotten. They're rotten to the core. I built this, I said, my voice rising for the first time. You know I built this. When Matilda was sick, when she was dying, I worked 18-hour days. I was negotiating the final sale of Innovatech from a plastic chair in a hospital waiting room running on vending machine coffee and 3 hours of sleep. I did all of it, so they would never have to know what real struggle feels like. So they could go to their fancy schools and their trips to Europe and live in their $4 million houses. I took a deep, shuddering breath. And tonight they stood on the marble floors I paid for in the house I paid for, and they laughed at me for being the very man who built it all. They didn't just laugh at me, Ben. They laughed at their mother's memory. They laughed at the foundation they are standing on. They're not just ungrateful, Ben. They're fools, and I do not suffer fools in my companies. Ben was silent for a long time. I could hear him breathing on the other end of the line. But Joseph, your grandchildren, he tried one last time, his voice soft. My grandchildren, I said, the ice returning. My grandchildren will learn a valuable lesson, a lesson their parents clearly failed to grasp, that actions have consequences, and that you never, ever bite the hand that feeds you, especially when that hand belongs to your father. All right, Ben said. His voice was all business now. He had shifted from friend back to lawyer. As your counsel, I understand your directive. As your friend, Joseph, this is going to be brutal. This isn't just firing them. This is financial execution. You'll be taking away their houses, their cars, their entire lives. Lives, I repeated, my voice flat. Lives that I funded. Lives they built on the premise that I was their fool. No, Ben. This is not execution. This is a correction. A market correction. They've been living in a bubble and I am simply popping it. So, what are the specifics? Ben asked. Here is what you will do, I said, leaning forward in my chair. First and most importantly, they cannot know this comes from me. Not now, not ever. My name is not to be associated with this decision in any official capacity. Is that clear? Understood, Ben said. Plausible deniability. You're the silent majority shareholder. I am the president of the holdings company. The decision will come from me officially. Exactly, I said. You as president of JP Holdings will call CEO Peterson first thing Monday morning before he's even had his coffee. You will inform him that the board, which is you and I, has had an emergency review of strategic priorities. We've decided that Apex Solutions is over-leveraged in middle and senior management, and we are authorizing a targeted strategic restructuring. Strategic restructuring, Ben repeated, the classic corporate term for a bloodbath. It's clean, it's impersonal, it's exactly what they deserve, I said. Peterson won't question you. He'll just be grateful it isn't his job on the line. You will instruct him to terminate the employment of Adam Parker, Emily Collins, and Mark Collins, effective immediately. Immediately, Ben confirmed. No 2 weeks' notice. None, I said. They are to be informed their access to the company network is to be revoked while they are still in the room, and they are to be escorted from the building by security, just like any other terminated employee. Joseph, I'm not finished, Ben, I interrupted. The severance. This is the most important part. I want their packages calculated to the minimum legal requirement, whatever the state of Connecticut mandates for termination without cause, not 1 penny more. Do you understand me? No. No bonuses? Ben asked, sounding genuinely shocked. Adam's contract guarantees a 6-figure bonus at the end of this quarter. Emily has unvested stock options. He's not making it to the end of the quarter, I said. The bonus clause is void. As for the stock options, they are unvested. They are worthless. They get nothing. They get their last paycheck, any accrued vacation pay, and the minimum legal severance. That is all. I continued the plan, forming perfectly in my mind. And Ben, their corporate credit cards, their company cars, all of it, revoked, deactivated, before they even get back to their desks. I want Mark Collins' company car towed from the parking lot before he's finished crying. I want Sarah's supplemental Amex, the one she uses for her expenses tied to Adam's account, to be declined. I want them to feel instantly what it means to be cut off. Ben let out a long, slow whistle. Joseph, this is scorched earth. They called me a simple old man, Ben. They called me a country bumpkin who wouldn't understand their world. They laughed at me. They are about to learn in the most painful way possible just how wrong they were. They'll learn what brutal really is. The line was silent for a full 30 seconds. I waited. I knew he would do it. He was the only person I trusted. All right, Ben said finally, his voice heavy with resignation. Monday morning, 9 a.m. sharp. I'll make the call to Peterson. I'll handle the paperwork for the severance myself. "Thank you, Ben," I said. "Don't thank me, Joseph," he replied. "This is a terrible thing. I'm just glad Matilda isn't here to see this. Good night." He hung up. I sat there in the darkness of my study. The time bomb was set. The countdown had begun. All I had to do now was wait for the explosion. And for the first time since Matilda passed, I looked forward to the start of a new week. Monday morning. The sun slanted weakly through the blinds of the Elm City diner, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. The diner smelled exactly as it had for 30 years, frying bacon, old coffee, and the faint, sweet scent of floor polish. This was my place, not Adam's $4 million stage. Brenda, a waitress who had been here almost as long as I, had slid my usual cup onto the table. It was thick white ceramic, chipped at the rim. "Just the coffee today, Joseph?" she asked, her voice raspy from a lifetime of shouting orders. "Just the coffee, Brenda. Black," I said. I unfolded my copy of the Wall Street Journal. My children probably thought I read the local paper if they imagined I read it all. They would be surprised to know I was checking the performance of my own holdings. The stock tickers in the finance section were my report card. I glanced at my watch. It was an old Timex, the leather band cracked with age. Matilda had given it to me for our 25th anniversary. It cost $30. It still kept perfect time. 8:58 a.m. Any moment now. I took a sip of the coffee. It was scalding hot, bitter, and real. Not the lukewarm, tasteless brew that Sarah served in delicate little cups that cost more than my watch. I turned the page of the journal, a detailed analysis of the tech sector. Predictable. Boring. I felt calm. The white-hot rage from Saturday night had cooled. The profound sadness had passed. All that remained was this absolute cold stillness. It was the stillness of a surgeon before the first incision. The trap was set. The lines were drawn. The mechanism was already in motion. 9 o'clock a.m. Right now, miles away, my oldest friend Ben Stone was picking up his private line. He was dialing CEO Peterson. Peterson, who had smiled politely as my children mocked me. Peterson, who was probably at this very second taking his first sip of an overpriced latte, thinking about his golf game for the upcoming weekend. His day was about to be ruined. I took another sip of my coffee. I pictured Adam, my son. He would be walking into his new senior vice president office, the one with the glass walls. He would be filled with that arrogance, that entitlement, feeling like the king of his world. I pictured Emily, my daughter, already at her desk, perhaps online shopping, charging a new pair of shoes to the corporate Amex. I pictured Mark, my son-in-law, probably complaining to a subordinate about the quality of the free coffee in the break room. They were all butterflies floating blissfully in the air, completely unaware that the glass jar was already descending upon them. The beautiful, insulated, expensive world I had built for them, the world they had so casually and cruelly pushed me out of, was about to evaporate. Brenda swung by again, coffee pot in hand. "You sure I can't get you some eggs, Joseph? You look like you're a million miles away." I folded the newspaper and placed it neatly beside my cup. I pulled my phone from my pocket and set it face up on the table. The screen was dark. "No thank you, Brenda," I said, giving her a small smile. "I'm just waiting on a few phone calls." 9:04 a.m. The phone was still dark, any second now. 9:05 a.m. The phone on the table buzzed. It was a low, angry vibration against the formica, loud enough to make Brenda look over from the counter. The screen lit up. Adam. I looked at it. I didn't move. I saw my son's name glowing on the dark screen. I thought of his face on Saturday night, laughing. I thought of the word simple. I calmly picked up my coffee cup and took a sip. The coffee was still hot. The phone continued to buzz. 1 ring, 2 rings, 3. It went silent. The screen went dark. Brenda turned back to wiping down the counter. I set my cup down. I picked up my newspaper. I started reading an article about soybean futures. I don't own any soybean commodities, but the analysis was interesting. 9:06 a.m. The phone buzzed again, more insistent this time. It skittered half an inch across the table. The screen lit up. Emily. My daughter. Her name glowed just as Adam's had. I thought of her high, patronizing voice. Just something to keep him busy in his old age. I thought of the $20,000 tuition check I'd written for her law school every semester for 3 years. I deliberately folded my newspaper in half, making a crisp, precise crease. The phone buzzed and stopped. The screen went dark. 9:07 a.m. The phone exploded. It was no longer a polite vibration. It was a frantic, desperate rattling. BZT, BZT, BZT. A new call was coming in before the last one had even disconnected. Adam, BZT, BZT, Adam, BZT, 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 Mark. It was vibrating so hard it was about to fall off the table. It was a symphony of panic. My panic, the panic I had created. I sighed as if mildly annoyed by the interruption. I didn't look at the names again. I already knew them. I picked up the phone. My hand was perfectly steady. I pressed the volume button on the side twice. The vibration stopped. The ringer was silenced. Then I pressed the power button and held it down. The screen offered me a choice. Power off. Restart. I pressed power off. The screen went black. Absolute silence. I placed the phone back on the table, a dark, useless brick. I picked up my coffee cup. I took another sip. I pictured the scene. I pictured Adam and his glass office security guard standing behind him, his face a mask of purple rage and disbelief. I pictured Emily in her cubicle sobbing into her hands as her corporate Amex was cut in half. I pictured Mark. Well, I just pictured Mark being useless, probably shouting at a receptionist who no longer worked for him. I smiled. Just a small private smile. I picked up my newspaper again and turned back to the article on soybean futures. I still had half a cup of coffee to finish. The morning was just getting started. I finished the last of the coffee. It was lukewarm now, but it didn't matter. I'd been sitting for 15 minutes. 15 minutes of total uninterrupted silence on my end. I imagined the chaos on theirs. The frantic calls between each other. The accusations. The disbelief. I imagined them huddled in the gleaming glass-walled lobby of the Apex building, ejected their access badges, deactivated. Good. I pulled my dark, silent phone toward me. I pressed the power button. The screen flickered to life. It was like opening a floodgate. The notifications poured in one after another, a cascade of desperation. 14 missed calls, 8 text messages, all in capital letters, and 3 new voicemails. I pressed play on the first one. Adam. The voice that came through the small speaker was barely recognizable. It wasn't the confident, booming baritone of the senior vice president from Saturday night. It was a high-pitched, breathless squeal. The sound of a man who had just seen the illusion of his entire life shatter at his feet. Dad, where are you? Why aren't you answering your phone, Dad? I listened calmly. I took a dollar bill from my wallet and placed it on the table for Brenda's tip. Dad, you have to do something. I just got fired. Fired me, and Emily, and Mark. All 3 of us. He was shouting now, his voice cracking. I could hear the sterile echo of the Apex lobby behind him. He must have been pacing. Peterson just called us in one by one. He said, strategic restructuring. Can you believe that? Strategic restructuring? I am the strategy. I'm the SVP. Dad. I signaled Brenda for the check. She nodded from the counter. You have to do something. You have contacts. You know people. You have to call someone. Call your lawyer. Call somebody. This is insane, Dad. I have the mortgage. The $4 million mortgage she's... Dad, you have to call me. You have to fix this now. The message ended with a gasp as if he'd run out of air. I deleted it. Fix this. Not, what did I do wrong? Not, why would this happen? Just, fix this. The entitlement was staggering. He wasn't calling his father. He was calling his servant, the simple old man who was supposed to clean up his messes. I pressed play on the second one. Emily. This one was just pure hysterical sobbing. It took her 10 seconds to even form a word. Da-adi, she wailed. The sound was high and thin. It was the same cry she used as a toddler when I told her she couldn't have ice cream before dinner. Daddy, I don't know what to do. I don't know what's happening. I looked out the diner window. A bus went by, splashing through a puddle. They cut off my card, the corporate card. I was just trying to buy coffee, and it was declined. She was crying about a cup of coffee. I thought about her laughter on Saturday. Just something to keep him busy. Mark is going crazy, Dad. He's screaming at everyone. They won't even let us back to our desks, and we have the tuition payments. The private school, Dad. The tuition for the kids is due next week. How are we going to pay it? My grandchildren. The tuition I had been paying for the last 3 years disguised as a gift to Emily's education fund. She had come to see even that as her own money. Daddy, please. You have to help us. You have to call Adam. You have to fix this. I deleted the message. One voicemail left. Mark, my son-in-law. I pressed play. This voice wasn't panicked. It wasn't sobbing. It was pure, unadulterated rage. Joseph. He didn't call me Dad. He didn't call me Father Joseph. He used my name. I don't know what kind of mess you've gotten yourself into or why your contacts are suddenly failing, but this is completely unacceptable. They towed my company car, towed it right out of the damn parking lot with my gym bag still in it. Emily is a wreck. This entire operation is completely unprofessional. Unprofessional. I almost smiled at that. The man who had failed at a startup I funded, who had laughed at my Toyota, was lecturing me on professionalism. You need to call your lawyer, he commanded, or whoever it is you talk to. You tell them they have made a catastrophic mistake. I expect this to be resolved and my vehicle returned by the end of the day. Do you understand me? Fix it. The line clicked. I deleted the final message. I sat there in the silence of the diner. 3 messages, 3 demands, not a single question. Not one of them had asked why. Not one of them had stopped for a single second to connect their behavior on Saturday night with the consequences on Monday morning. They didn't see a connection between their actions and their reality. They were so insulated by the money I provided, so blinded by their own arrogance that they couldn't conceive of a world where they were held accountable. They were just angry that the simple old man in the corner had failed in his one true purpose to provide for their world. My decision was not just correct, it was necessary. I placed another $1 on the table for Brenda, making it a $5 tip on a $2 coffee. I slid out of the booth. The phone in my pocket started buzzing again. I ignored it. Have a good day, Joseph, Brenda called out. You too, Brenda, I said, pushing open the heavy glass door. I stepped out onto the sidewalk. The New Haven air was crisp. I got into my 2005 Toyota. The engine started on the first try, just like it always did. I pulled out into traffic heading home. I knew they would be there soon. I knew they would be desperate. And I was ready. I parked the Toyota in its usual spot. My apartment building was quiet as always. The elevator rattled its familiar song as it climbed to the 4th floor. I walked into my home, hung my keys on the hook, and didn't bother turning my phone back on. I knew it was no longer necessary. They knew where I lived. I went to the kitchen, made myself a simple ham and cheese sandwich on rye bread, and poured a glass of milk. I sat at my small kitchen table, the one Matilda and I had eaten at for 40 years, and I ate my lunch in complete silence. Afterward, I washed my plate, my glass, and the knife. I dried them and put them away. I went to the living room, sat in my worn leather armchair, and picked up the book I had been reading. It was a biography of General Grant, a man who understood strategy, a man who understood that sometimes victory required absolute, unwavering resolve. I read. The clock on the mantel ticked. 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 2:30. I was on the chapter about the Vicksburg campaign. 3 o'clock. p.m. The sound that came through my door was not a knock. It was an explosion. Boom, 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 boom. It was the frantic, furious pounding of fists. Not just one person's fists. Several. It sounded like they were trying to break the door down. The old wood in the frame rattled. A small picture of Adam and Emily as children sitting on my lap at the beach vibrated on the wall. Boom, boom, boom. Dad, open this door. I know you're in there. Adam's voice. But it was the voice from the voicemail, strained and cracking. I slowly, deliberately folded the corner of the page I was on. I placed the book on the end table. I took a sip from the glass of water I'd poured. I stood up, smoothing the front of my cardigan. I was in no hurry. This was my home. They were the invaders. I walked to the door, my steps measured and silent on the old rug. The pounding was continuous now, a desperate, angry rhythm. Dad, open the door, damn it! This is not funny! I reached the door. I looked through the peephole. The fisheye lens showed me a scene of chaos. 4 faces distorted by the glass and their own panic. Adam was in front, his face purple, his expensive tie ripped loose from his collar. Sarah was just behind him, her perfect blonde hair, a total mess, mascara running in black streaks down her cheeks. Emily was there pressed against the wall, openly sobbing, her face red and swollen. And Mark was just shifting his weight from foot to foot, looking useless and terrified like a man caught in a storm he couldn't understand. I turned the deadbolt. The click was loud in the hallway and the pounding stopped instantly. I opened the door. They stood there blinking like creatures of the night suddenly exposed to sunlight. They looked ruined. The four of them in their $1,000 suits and silk dresses looked like refugees. Sarah's eyes were wild. Emily looked like a child. Adam didn't wait for an invitation. He lunged past me, stumbling into my living room. "Dad, what the hell is wrong with you? Why was your phone off? Do you have any idea what just happened?" He was breathing heavily, pacing back and forth on my small rug, his hands pulling at his own hair. Sarah, Emily, and Mark just filed in behind him, a silent, miserable procession, and stood there in my foyer looking at me as if I were a stranger. I closed the door slowly. I turned to face my son. I put on my best simple old man face, the one they knew so well. I looked at him with mild, grandfatherly confusion. "My goodness, Adam, what's all the noise about?" I said, my voice calm. "I turned the phone off. I was taking a nap. I was reading my book. You look just terrible, all of you. Is everything all right?" "All right," Sarah shrieked. The word came out high and broken. Her mask of sophisticated elegance was gone, shattered. Her face was blotchy, her expensive mascara running in black rivers down her cheeks. She looked like a wild animal. "Is everything all right?" She lunged forward, stopping just short of grabbing my cardigan. "No, nothing is all right. We've been fired. Fired. Do you understand what that means, you simple old man?" I just looked at her. I didn't flinch. "You have to help us," she screamed, her voice cracking. "This is your fault. You have to fix it. You have savings. You have all those stupid rental apartments. You have to give us money right now." She was pointing at me, her finger trembling with rage. It was fascinating. This was the same woman who just 48 hours ago had politely offered me a glass of water, as if I were a distant, slightly embarrassing relative. Now, the moment her world was threatened, I was no longer a simple old man. I was a solution. I was a walking, talking wallet. "We are going to lose everything." Mark, my son-in-law, finally spoke up, his voice a pathetic whine. "The house, Joseph. The house, the payments. We can't make the payments without my salary, without Emily's salary." This from the man who had laughed about my Toyota. The man whose $100,000 startup I had funded, which he ran into the ground in less than 6 months. He wasn't worried about his family. He was worried about his assets. "They took the car," he mumbled, sinking onto the small bench by my door, his head in his hands. They towed the company car. My golf clubs were in the trunk. Emily just stood there leaning against the wall, her body shaking with silent sobs. She couldn't even look at me. She just cried, her hands covering her face, making these awful gasping sounds. She at least seemed to possess a sliver of the shame this situation demanded. Adam just kept pacing, back and forth on my small Persian rug. 4 steps turn, 4 steps turn. He hadn't said a word since his initial outburst. He was just pulling at his hair. His $4,000 suit hopelessly wrinkled his face, a mask of disbelief and pure, undiluted panic. They were all falling apart, the 4 of them. Their entire world was collapsing, and their first only instinct was to run to the simple old man they despised and demand that I put it back together for them. It was exactly what I had expected, and it was just the beginning. I let the silence stretch out thick and heavy, broken only by Emily's gasping sobs and Sarah's ragged breathing. They were all looking at me. Their eyes were wide, desperate, like cornered animals. They had screamed, they had demanded, they had cried. And now they were just waiting for me to fix it. I sighed a long, slow sigh as if I was carrying the weight of their problems. I put on my most thoughtful expression. "My goodness," I said softly, shaking my head. This is a terrible mess. Fired, all 3 of you, and at the same time. It must be some kind of mistake, a dreadful, dreadful mistake." Adam, my son, stopped pacing. He looked at me, latching onto the word. "Mistake," he repeated, his voice hoarse. "Yes, that's what I said. It has to be a mistake. Peterson. He just read from a script. It was inhuman." "A mistake," I mused, rubbing my chin. "Well, if it's a mistake, maybe it can be undone." I saw a flicker of hope in their eyes. It was pathetic. After all this, after mocking me, after demanding money from me, they were still looking to me for a solution. They were still so blinded by their own arrogance that they couldn't see the man standing in front of them. They just saw the simple old man, the man with a few contacts downtown. I don't know many important people, I said humbly, looking down at my shoes. Not like you, Adam. You're the one in the big leagues. Don't be an idiot, Dad, Adam snapped, all his fake respect gone. You've been in this town for 50 years. You must know somebody. A lawyer. A politician. Someone. Well, I said as if an idea had just slowly dawned on me. I do have one person I talk to now and then. An old friend. He's a lawyer. Ben Stone. Maybe he's heard something. He handles some legal work for my properties. He might know someone at Apex or at least know who to ask. Then call him, Sarah shrieked, jumping to her feet. What are you waiting for? Call him now. All right, I said, raising my hand to calm them. No need to shout, Sarah. I'm an old man. My heart can't take all this excitement. I walked slowly, deliberately to the small table by my armchair. I picked up my old flip phone. They probably thought I didn't even own a smartphone. This was perfect. They watched me, all four of them, holding their breath. Their entire $4 million world was hanging by a thread, and they thought their last hope was a phone call from a simple old man to his local lawyer friend. I dialed Ben's private number from memory. He's probably busy, I said, holding the phone to my ear. It's the middle of the day. Hello, Ben's voice answered gravelly and professional. Ah, Ben, I said, feigning relief. You picked up. Thank you. Listen, I have my children here with me, Adam and Emily, and they seem to be in a terrible spot of bother. I looked at Adam. His eyes were laser-focused on me. Ben, I'm going to put you on speakerphone, I said. My hearing isn't what it used to be. I pressed the button. A small beep echoed in the quiet room. J.P. Holdings. Ben Stone speaking. How can I help you, Mr. Parker? The small beep of the speakerphone turning on was the only sound in the room. It was followed by the click of the line connecting and then a voice. A voice I knew as well as my own, but one my children had never heard. It wasn't the voice of Uncle Ben, the friendly old lawyer who smelled of pipe tobacco. This was the voice of the chairman. J.P. Holdings, Ben Stone said. His voice was gravelly, professional, and cold. This is Ben Stone speaking. How can I help you, Mr. Parker? I saw Sarah frown. J.P. Holdings. The name clearly meant something to her. She worked in finance. She would have seen the name on high-level memos. But she couldn't make the connection. Not yet. Adam and Emily just looked confused, impatient. What is J.P. Holdings? Adam whispered at me, annoyed. Dad, just ask him. I held up a hand for silence. Ben, I said, my voice still light, still playing the part of the confused old man. Ben, thank you for taking my call. I have my children here with me, Adam and Emily, and my son-in-law, Mark. I looked at them. They were all leaning forward, their faces a mask of desperate hope. They were waiting for their simple father's lawyer friend to express outrage, to promise to make some calls to fix this. Ben, I continued, it seems there's been a terrible misunderstanding this morning. They've all been fired from Apex Solutions, all three of them. Can you imagine? The speakerphone was silent for a beat. When Ben spoke again, all pretense of friendship was gone. His voice was a blade. Misunderstanding, Mr. Parker, he said. No, I'm afraid there has been no misunderstanding at all. The hope on Adam's face didn't just drain. It collapsed. Sarah's eyes widened. Ben continued his words slow and deliberate, each one a hammer blow. Yes, Mr. Parker, I am perfectly aware of the terminations. I personally gave the directive to CEO Peterson this morning, at 9 a.m. sharp. He paused, letting the implication sink in. It was a direct order from the board. The silence in my small living room was absolute. It was heavier and more profound than any silence in Adam's $4 million mansion. Emily's sobbing had stopped, frozen in her throat. Mark, who had been slumped on the bench, sat bolt upright. Adam was the first to speak. His voice was a stammer, a confused sputter. The board. What board? Mr. Stone, what are you talking about? He was still lost. He couldn't connect the dots. He looked at me, then back at the phone. You're my father's lawyer. You handle his rental properties. He gestured frantically around my small apartment, as if the peeling paint and old furniture were proof. What is his lawyer? What do you have to do with the board of my company?" Emily found her voice. It was a small, trembling whisper. "Mr. Stone, I don't understand. Why would you be the one to give that order?" This was the moment. I leaned back in my armchair, my hands folded, and watched. "Your confusion is understandable," Ben said through the speaker. His tone was that of a judge addressing a very, very stupid defendant. "So let me be perfectly clear. I am, as you've always known, Mr. Joseph Parker's personal attorney. I have had that privilege for 50 years. He paused again. The timing was perfect. "I am also," he continued, "the president and chairman of JP Holdings." This time Sarah gasped. She knew the name. I could see the blood drain from her face. Her hand flew to her mouth. JP Holdings," she whispered, her eyes darting from the phone to my face. The private equity firm, the one that bought." Adam was still lost. What is JP Holdings, Sarah? What does that have to do with anything?" Ben's voice cut him off cold and final. "JP Holdings is a private diversified asset management firm, and as of 4 years ago, it is the parent company, the sole parent company, that owns 100% of the shares of Apex Solutions." The silence in the room was no longer just silence. It was a vacuum. It was the sound of air being sucked out of their lungs. Mark, my son-in-law, just shook his head, completely lost. I don't... What does that mean? Parent company? What is JP? He looked at Adam, but Adam was frozen, his mouth half open, staring at the small cheap flip phone on my table as if it were a bomb. He was still stuck. He couldn't make the leap. To him, I was just his father, the simple man, the man who changed his own oil. But Sarah knew. She had worked in finance before she married Adam. She knew the names. She knew the players. Her face, which had been red with rage, went a chalky, sickly white, the kind of white that comes from pure, bottomless shock. Her eyes darted from the phone to my face, back to the phone, back to my face. "JP," she whispered. The word was barely audible. It was just a puff of air. JP Holdings. She was looking at me now, not at the embarrassed old man. She was looking at me, really looking at me for the first time in her life. Her eyes were wide with a dawning, terrible horror. "JP," she mouthed, the sound sticking in her throat. Adam saw his wife's expression. He saw the terror. He looked at her, then looked at me. He still didn't get it. "Sarah, what is it? What is JP?" Emily, my daughter, was watching Sarah's face. She followed Sarah's horrified gaze, which was locked on me. Emily's eyes, red and swollen from crying, slowly widened. The tears stopped. She looked at my old cardigan. She looked at my cracked Timex watch. And then she looked at my face. "JP," Emily whispered, her voice trembling, her hand coming up to her mouth. "JP." She took a staggered breath. "Joseph Parker." The name hung in the air of my small, quiet apartment. It seemed to echo off the old bookshelves and the worn furniture. "No," Adam said, shaking his head, a pathetic, desperate laugh escaping his lips. "No, that's ridiculous. That's not... Dad, what is this? What joke is this?" They were all staring at me now, all 4 of them. Their entire world had tilted on its axis. The simple, harmless, embarrassing old man in the corner, the man they had laughed at, was suddenly at the center of their universe, and they were finally beginning to understand. "No," Adam said, shaking his head, a pathetic, desperate laugh escaping his lips. "No, that's ridiculous. That's not... Dad, what is this? What joke is this?" They were all staring at me now, all 4 of them. Their entire world had tilted on its axis. The simple, harmless, embarrassing old man in the corner, the man they had laughed at, was suddenly at the center of their universe, and they were finally finally beginning to understand. I reached over and pressed the end button on the flip phone. The small beep of the call disconnecting was the loudest sound I had ever heard in my life. The room was perfectly terribly still. 4 people, 4 statues frozen in different stages of disbelief. Adam's mouth was half open, but no sound was coming out. Mark, my son-in-law, was shaking his head slowly over and over, muttering, "No, no, no," under his breath. Emily, my daughter, was frozen, her hand still covering her mouth, her eyes wide. But Sarah was the one to watch. She had worked in finance. She knew the names. She knew the players. Her face, which had been red with rage just moments before, had drained to a chalky, sickly white, the kind of white that comes from pure bottomless shock. Her eyes, wide and terrified, darted from the silent flip phone on my table to my face, back to the phone, back to my face. "It's you," she whispered. The words were just air. It wasn't a question. It was an accusation. The simple old man, J.P. Holdings. "It's you." I didn't smile. I didn't move. I just met her gaze. "Yes," I said. My voice was calm, steady. "Yes, I own Apex Solutions. I also own the building your office is in. I own Innovatech, the software company in the building next door. I own 11 other companies, Adam. 11. I turned my gaze to my son. He looked as if I had just struck him hard across the face. "The 2005 Toyota Camry out front," I continued, my voice even, "is paid for. I've owned it free and clear for 17 years. Your $100,000 leased sedan. How much do you still owe on that Sun 60,070? And now you have no job." The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. She made a sound, a high-pitched, strangled gasp like she couldn't get air. Her knees buckled. She didn't faint. She just collapsed. She crumpled onto my old rug, her expensive silk dress pooling around her, and she began to sob. Not the polite fake tears from Saturday night. These were ugly, guttural, agonizing sobs of pure, absolute loss. Adam and Mark were too stunned to move. They just stared at Sarah, then at me. It was Emily who finally broke the silence. Her voice was small, broken, the voice of a little girl. "Dad," she whispered. Tears were streaming unchecked down her face. Why would you do this? Why would you fire us?" I turned my full attention to my daughter. "Why?" I repeated her question. "You're asking me why?" I let the question hang in the air of my small apartment. I walked slowly toward her, stopping just a few feet away. "You're right about one thing, Emily," I said softly. "You didn't know I was your boss. You couldn't have. I made sure of that. That's a fair point." I leaned in a little closer, my voice dropping. "But you knew I was your father." Her breath hitched. She recoiled as if I had raised my hand. "You knew," I continued, "that I was the man who raised you, the man who walked you down the aisle, the man who held you when Matilda passed. You knew that man, and you stood there," I said, the ice returning to my voice, "in that ridiculous expensive house, and you listened as your husband and your sister-in-law mocked that man to his face. You didn't just listen, Emily, you joined in." "Dad, no, she stammered. "Oh yes," I interrupted, quoting her own patronizing words back to her. "He has a few rental properties downtown, just to keep him busy in his old age." I mimicked her high, sweet, condescending tone. "Is that what you think of me? A hobbyist? A simpleton to be kept busy? Is that what the education I paid for taught you?" I turned my gaze to Mark, who was trying to blend into the wallpaper. "And you, Mark, you laughed about my car, the car your mother-in-law loved. You joked about me changing my own oil. You stood there, a man whose failed business I paid to shut down, and you laughed at my thrift, my common sense." I finally looked back at Sarah, who was still weeping on the floor. "And you, he doesn't understand our world. You said that. You living in a house I put the down payment on, wearing clothes I indirectly paid for, drinking champagne I certainly paid for. You had the audacity, the arrogance, to suggest that I didn't understand your world. It was a joke. Adam finally exploded. The denial was so strong it was almost pathetic. He was red-faced, desperate, clutching at straws. It was just a stupid party joke, Dad. That's all. You can't destroy our lives over a stupid joke. A joke, I said, nodding slowly. You think this is about a joke. You think this is about my feelings. I laughed. It was a short, sharp, bitter sound. It was the first time I had laughed in their presence in years. The sound shocked them all into silence. You still don't get it, I said, walking to my desk and picking up the small framed photo of Matilda. I looked at her smiling face. You never have. You think this is about me. It's not. It's about you. It's about your entitlement, your arrogance, your profound, limitless, staggering ingratitude. Destroy your lives. I repeated his words, my voice rising, vibrating with an anger I had held down for a decade. Let me tell you about destroying lives, Adam. You come in here, into this apartment, the apartment you are ashamed of, and you demand I fix your problem. You Adam who stood in a $4 million house, a house I put an $800,000 down payment on as a loan. And you laughed at me. And you, Emily, I said, turning to her, my voice sharp. You cried about your corporate card being declined, the card for a job at a company I own. You cried about your children's private school tuition, a tuition I have paid every installment for 3 years straight as a gift you just expected. And you, I pointed at Mark, you whined about your golf clubs being in a car that I gave you, a company car for a job you only have because you married my daughter. You live in a world I built for you, a world I financed. You talk about your world. There is no your world. There is only my world. And I have been letting you live in it, because I'm your father, because I loved you, because I hoped that one day you would grow up, that you would see the man, not the money. I shook my head, the sadness finally hitting me cold and heavy. But you never did. You saw the money, and you despised the man who made it. You thought I was a fool, a simple old-fashioned fool. They were all silent. There was nothing left to say. The truth was finally laid bare here in my small, humble living room. I placed the photo of Matilda back on the desk. Well, I said, my voice quiet again. The fool has had enough. The bank is closed. I walked to the front door. I opened it wide. The dim, waxed light of the apartment hallway spilled in. Dad, please, Adam whispered. He was broken. I could see it. Dad, what are we supposed to do? I looked at him. My son, the man-child standing where he once stood as a boy, asking for help with his homework. I don't know, Adam, I said, my voice void of all emotion. You're a senior vice president. You're a man of your world. I'm sure you'll figure it out. I held the door open, waiting. Now please get out of my apartment. I'm a simple man, and I need to get back to my book. 2 weeks passed. My phone remained silent. I did not turn it back on. My life returned to its quiet rhythm. I went to the diner. I read my books. I fixed the peeling paint on my Toyota's bumper. It was a good, clean repair. It satisfied me. The world, however, did not stop. Ben called me on my landline on a Friday afternoon. Joseph, he said, his voice tired. Just giving you the weekly report. I knew he wasn't calling about the soybean futures. How are they? Ben. He sighed. Well, the news of JP Holdings terminating 3 high-level executives simultaneously, that kind of news travels fast. Very fast. Adam has apparently put out feelers to every competitor in the tri-state area. No one will touch him. No one wants to hire an SVP who was personally and suddenly fired by the board. And Emily, the same. Mark is apparently toxic. As for Sarah, well, Adam's assets are being frozen pending a review of his corporate spending. The bank is foreclosing on the Greenwich house. They have 30 days. I see, I said. It gave me no pleasure. But it was the simple, unavoidable math of their choices. They built a house of cards on a foundation of arrogance. A strong wind came. The house fell. It's the natural order of things. Is that all? Ben asked. That's all, I said. Thank you, Ben. I hung up. They were losing their homes. They were unemployable. They were toxic. The world they were so proud of had cast them out the moment their financial backing, my financial backing, disappeared. I wondered what they would do. I didn't have to wonder for long. That Sunday evening, I was reading my book on General Grant. The apartment was quiet. I was listening to an old vinyl record, some classical music Matilda had loved. A knock came at the door. This knock was not the thunderous, angry pounding from 2 weeks ago. It was soft, hesitant, almost fearful. A tap, 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 pause, tap, tap. I put my book down. I walked to the door and looked through the peephole. It was just two of them, Adam and Emily. There was no Sarah. There was no Mark. They just stood there in the dim hallway light, not looking at each other. They looked small. Adam wasn't wearing a suit. He was in an old sweatshirt and jeans, clothes I hadn't seen him wear since he was in college. Emily was wearing a simple coat, her hair pulled back, her face pale and without makeup. They looked thin, tired, and broken. I opened the door. They both flinched as if expecting me to yell. I just stood there waiting. Adam wouldn't look at me. He just stared at this floor at my old shoes. It was Emily who spoke first. Her voice was raw, a hoarse whisper. "Dad," she said, and her eyes instantly filled with tears. "Dad, can we come in? Please, it's cold." I stepped aside. They walked in, not with the arrogance of owners, but with the shuffling uncertainty of strangers. They stood in the middle of my living room, looking around as if they had never seen it before, as if they were seeing the warmth, the history, the home they had always overlooked. Emily couldn't hold it in. She covered her face and just broke. The sobs were silent, agonizing, shaking her whole body. "Dad, I'm so sorry," she cried into her hands. I'm so stupid. I was so stupid and so cruel. I'm so sorry." Adam still couldn't look at me. He was just staring at the photo of Matilda on the desk. He was trembling. "Adam," I said, my voice quiet, not unkind. He finally looked at me. His eyes were red. This wasn't the SVP. This wasn't the man from the party. This was just my son. He started, his voice thick. I was ashamed of you, Dad. I was ashamed." He said the words as if they were poison he had to get out. "I was ashamed of the best man I've ever known. The strongest, most decent man. I failed. As a son, as a man, I failed. I'm so sorry, Dad. I'm so sorry." "Sarah left me." He said the words, falling into the quiet room. "The day the bank sent the foreclosure notice, she took the kids and went to her mother's. She said I was a fool. She said I had failed to manage my assets." He laughed, a short, dead sound. "My assets. She meant you." "Mark left too," Emily whispered, wiping her face. He said he didn't sign up to be married to a failure. He packed a bag and left. He told me the tuition bills were my problem now. He's gone." So, the world they loved, the world of status and money, had no loyalty. The rats had fled the sinking gilded ship. "I see," I said. I sat down in my armchair. I looked at these two strangers, my children. "So now you have nothing." "We have nothing," Adam agreed, his voice hollow. "We deserve nothing." I let that sit in the air. The truth. Finally. "No," I said after a long minute. "You don't deserve nothing. You deserve to start over, the right way." They looked at me confused. Hope is a dangerous thing, and they were afraid to feel it. "I'm not giving you your jobs back," I said flatly. "Apex Solutions that's over for you. That life is over." "I know," Adam said, nodding. We'll figure something out. We'll get jobs, mowing lawns, whatever it takes." "You won't have to mow lawns," I said. "I own another company, a non-profit, the Matilda Parker Foundation. We fund women's shelters' cancer research. It was your mother's passion. They're looking for project coordinators. It's entry level. The pay is $50,000 a year." Their eyes widened. 50,000. It was what they probably spent on wine in 6 months. "There is no company car," I continued, "no corporate card, no expense account. You will report to a manager, you will be expected to be on time, you will work hard, and you will learn what it means to earn $1 instead of just taking one." I looked at them. "You will start from the absolute bottom, and you will build your own lives this time, your real lives. Do you understand?" Adam couldn't speak. He just nodded, his eyes overflowing. Emily walked over, hesitant, and she did something she hadn't done in 10 years. She knelt by my chair, wrapped her arms around my waist, and buried her face in my lap. "Thank you, Daddy," she wept. "Thank you." Adam just stood there watching us, his face a complex mask of shame and profound, agonizing relief. I put my hand on my daughter's head. "It's all right, Emily," I said. I looked at Adam. "It's going to be all right." I sat there for a long time, my hand on my daughter's hair, my son watching me, the three of us silent in the small, warm apartment. "I was about to make dinner," I said finally, my voice a little rough. "I have a pot roast. There's enough for 3. The story of Joseph Parker is a powerful reminder that true family is built on a foundation of mutual respect, not just shared blood or financial obligation. It teaches us that generosity without boundaries can accidentally breed entitlement, and entitlement left unchecked can curdle into profound disrespect. Joseph's journey shows that setting firm boundaries, even if it feels painful, is sometimes the only path to reclaiming one's own dignity. Ultimately, it's a lesson that real love cannot be bought, and self-respect is the only asset truly worth protecting at all costs. What would you have done if you were in Joseph's shoes, and do you think he was too harsh or completely justified? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below.
Did you enjoy my story? What a journey it has been. I truly wonder, what would you have done if you were in my shoes? Would you have chosen silence to keep the peace, or would you have done what I did to reclaim your dignity? Let's meet in the comments below. I'm so curious to hear your thoughts. I'm reading every single one. Which city are you listening from tonight? If my story resonated with you, you can support me and help me bring more stories like this to the world by sending a super thanks. Your sweet support means the world to me and allows me to continue this journey with all of you. On the screen now, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend you watch next. There are so many more on my channel, each with its own lessons and triumphs. Don't forget to subscribe and click the notification bell so you never miss a new chapter. Thank you for being here with me. Until the next story, with love and respect.